Hope you guys are ready for something really cool and exciting. Sony is changing the game. This is the brand new cinema line from Sony. It's the FX30.
And you guys might think that it looks very familiar, because it does. It looks exactly like the FX3 that Sony launched last year. But big difference on this unit. You now have an APS-C size sensor, so Super 35 on this unit. And when Andre says changing the game, he is not messing about, because this creates a whole new segment in the world of cinema level recording. So we're going to check this unit out. We're going to run you guys through the specs, put it through its paces. So join us for that. Now for this review, we were fortunate enough to be lent a car by Wiggle Car Rentals down here in Cape Town. And she was quite a beauty. So we had a lovely Audi S5 Cabriolet, and we took it around the peninsula a bit, drove it around, took some shots with it, and basically gave this camera a bit of a workout, because you are filming a highly reflective surface, light conditions constantly changing, fast moving subject matter to test out that crispy autofocus, basically putting this camera through its paces. And to jump ahead a little bit, we were impressed.
Yeah,
no two ways around it. No two ways around it. We were super impressed with this camera. But before we get into that, let's run you through some of the specs on this unit.
Before we run through this monstrous spec list of the FX30, I kind of want you guys to keep in the back of your mind that this is a baby FX3. Now first up is the sensor. It's a Super 35 4K back illuminated sensor. You have the Bionz XR processor. You can shoot 4K 120 frames per second, Full HD at a crazy 240 frames per second. Your file recording formats is the XAVC-S, the XAVC-SI, and the XAVC-HS.
Yeah, and those formats are available in the 10-bit 422 long GOP, All-I, and also in H.264 and H.265 compression. Now, on the FX30, you have a native ISO range running from 100 to 32,000, but that is expandable up to 109,400. You also have dual base ISOs, very impressive specs for a camera in this class. So your base ISOs is 800 and 2,500 on this unit. Now, what that gives you is a 14-stop dynamic range latitude. Again, very impressive. In terms of color profiles, we have exactly what we expect from Sony in this range. So for your log, you have access to S-Log 3, and we all know how gorgeous that log profile is. You also have Sony's S-Cinetone, as well as S709 and HLG options. Now, for the log shooting, there's also a couple of options built in related specifically to the ISO and of course the base ISO usage. So Sony offers you a flexible ISO setting, a Cine EI setting, and a Cine EI quick settings.
Now, probably due to cost and body size, there is no variable NDs built into the body, which is quite fine for this range, to be honest. In terms of autofocus, the same. We can expect Sony's best algorithms in here. We've got the human, animal, and bird tracking, and we were quite happy with the autofocus performance when we were shooting.
Yeah.
Autofocus assist, yes, and also focus map. Now, quite interesting is that the FX30 gives you focus breathing compensation built into the body, which is great when you're using lenses that are not generally designed for videography. The FX30 also features a 5-axis in-body stabilizer. It'll give you 5 stops of stabilization. It'll also allow you to shoot 16-bit raw video out via the HDMI. Now in terms of the body, this is pretty much identical to the FX3, right?
Yeah, it is actually 100% identical. And the only real difference in terms of the actual body is the weight. Now your FX3 weighs 630 grams, and this unit as it stands here is 562 grams. So a little bit lighter, and that is pretty much completely down to the smaller sensor that's inside the unit. Everything else on here is essentially an FX3. So you have your zoom rocker at the top, which is compatible with Sony's power zoom lenses. You have a dedicated record button. You have a multitude of 1/4-inch thread mounting points placed all over the body. Very, very handy for adapting cages or handles onto the unit itself. You have your fully articulating screen. Everything very much as we expect from Sony at this point.
And also to mention that the top handle with your XLR ports is included when you buy this body, which is another great feature. In terms of media, you have the brand new Sony Express Type A card and also SD. You have the very common NP-FZ100 battery, which is a battery that's used in almost all of Sony's models at the moment. In terms of ports, we mentioned the full-size HDMI port as well. You've got your 3.5 mini jack input, you've got your headphone output, and obviously your USB-C, which will allow you to power and charge the camera as well. And you also have this multi-port, which will allow you to fit some controllers if needed.
Indeed. So lastly on this unit, you also have a telelamp on the back of the unit and also on the front. And as is standard with the FX3 as well, if the screen is folded out, once you hit record, you also get a red ring all the way around the screen to tell you that you are busy recording. Everything else though, as we've said before, is perfectly standard Sony. It feels solid, feels like a little beast. All the buttons do exactly what you want them to do. They feel very tactile, very heavy, very solid. It is essentially an FX3 slimmed down a little bit, but perfect, man. Beautiful little camera. So while we're talking about the ergonomics of this camera, it's worthwhile to roll into the actual shooting experience. And first things first, shooting handheld with this camera, pretty much perfect. Absolutely. Your grip is exactly where you need it to be. Everything falls to hand, and the natural stability that you can get out of it, whether you're shooting over here or in that underslung position, pretty much perfect, at least for me. I don't know how you've thought about it, but
yeah, we weren't shooting with the top handle yesterday so much because we did do some gimbal work, but obviously we did test the stabilization in the body by doing handheld. And it does feel like a premium professional camera that you're holding. It doesn't feel like this very entry-level, like stripped down FX3. It has the exact same body as we said. So shooting experience with this is really positive. We were shooting like kind of in the lunchtime period where the sun was really pumping, and the biggest issue for me was the LCD.
yes.
We did pump up the LCD brightness a little bit, but I think most users that will be shooting this will probably be purchasing a monitor just to monitor your exposure a little bit better and also to see your focus a little bit more accurately. But I think we kind of trusted the Sony focus and it came out like perfectly.
Yeah, so you'll see from the shots that we're showing you that this is pretty much the best Sony focusing that we've experienced thus far. So you have all the modes that you possibly want. You have the human face and eye tracking, the animal tracking, cars, bikes, all of that kind of stuff is built in here. But when you're shooting, you don't really use those types of modes. If you're shooting the type of stuff that we were shooting for this review, you're more relying on your tap to focus, and of course your lock-on track focus within the frame. And it worked beautifully. You will see the transition in this camera from foreground to background elements within the focusing is absolutely amazing. And obviously you can set the speed of that transition. It is just perfection. It is beautiful. And the results that you get from it, incredibly sharp, like really, really sharp off the sensor. And I mean, we weren't even recording into an external monitor, so we were shooting internally, and the results are phenomenal.
Even that shot we did at 120, we were kind of worried if the crop sensor or Super 35 mode will affect the detail, but we were super surprised at the image detail that it was collecting at 120 frames per second.
Yeah, you're talking about that specific shot where you're walking and it's literally like your shoes as you're going and then opening the car door.
Yes, yeah.
I'm gonna go on about that shot for a little bit because it is by far my favorite shot of the day and it looks incredible. Like, if you look at that specific shot, you can almost count the threads in the canvas of your shoes. It is that sharp. And nowadays, you know, you see a lot of 4K 120, a lot of cameras are doing it. It's kind of like become just sort of another feature that everybody does. But in a lot of cameras, there's so much processing and image interference happening to get that output straight off the sensor, especially recording internally, that you tend to lose quality. There's a lot of compression happening and just a lot of interference. This really looks like it's just shooting straight up 120 frames per second. Yes, we know there's a slight additional crop when you are shooting at 120 on the sensor, but that's fine because look at the results you're getting. It is truly, truly incredible. Now, throughout the day, we shot pretty much the whole range of file formats and bit depths that's available. So we were shooting 422, 420, 8-bit, 10-bit, the XAVCS, the SI, and of course the high speed as well to get the 420. And pretty much everything you were shooting at is really, really good. Even the 8-bit 420, when we played it back on a big monitor, it looked great. It really looked phenomenal. Yeah, obviously you're shooting 10-bit 422, you're gonna get a little bit extra depth, you're gonna have more editing latitude, no two ways around it. But for a quick output and a quick delivery, that 8-bit is perfectly usable.
On that note, on shooting on 8-bit and 10-bit, something we realized heavily through the day is that this little beast requires a lot of power. Now, when we switched from 8-bit to 10-bit, we probably saw like a 50% sort of drain in the battery instantly.
Yeah.
So if you are looking at this, we would probably recommend getting like either multiple batteries or maybe try and get like sort of a V-lock system attached to the camera if you're running for a whole day.
Yeah, the other thing to remember about this camera is that you do have a built-in fan for heat extraction. And once that starts turning, your battery power just goes nowhere. Now, this isn't a knock on Sony. It's pretty much what we see across the industry because you have what is essentially a cinema style camera and, you know, power consumption related to that, but you're using consumer grade batteries and, you know, certain other components that's not designed for a camera like this. There is a reason why something like Sony's FX6 or FX9 uses, you know, batteries that you struggle to carry around. So yeah, just take some extra along or convert into a different type of powering system and you will be well sorted. Kind of a small price to pay, really.
At the start of the video we said Sony is changing the game, and I really do feel like they are doing it with the FX30. They are looking at the market and seeing that video content is huge. Either it is shooting documentaries, shooting videos for YouTube, TikTok even, company needs videos for social media. There's so many video avenues that's opening up in the market. And this camera is gonna fill that gap hugely.
Yeah, I mean, you are essentially putting out a camera here that, even though we don't know the exact pricing at the time of recording this video, simply because it is quite a while before release, you're putting out a camera that is going to be, by all accounts, significantly more affordable than any other cinema camera in the game right now. It is, as you said, it's revolutionary. It is tapping into a market segment that right now nobody else is even touching. Everybody else at the moment is relying on content creators to adapt more consumer-focused cameras into this type of area. So you have to take your consumer camera and add a cage, add accessories, try a workaround to get professional audio into the system. And Sony just goes, nope.
We got this.
Yeah, we are giving you something that slots in there so beautifully. And what we probably should have said at the beginning of this video is that neither of us are video shooters. Okay? We are very much stills guys. You know, that's where we come from. That's what we learned. That's what we spent the last 20 years doing. But shooting with this thing, and I don't know if you feel the same way, man, it was easy.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, you shot with it and the results are phenomenal. And it's rare that for me, I find a camera that is so tech focused, that really speaks to me. You know, I like things a little bit slower, a little bit more analog. But this thing really, really spoke to me. And I can't tell you exactly why. I really can't. It just worked. It's so easy. It's so good. The features that you have on here gives you every single opportunity to create exactly what you wanted. And we shot this little reel and, you know, some of the footage that you saw. And for me, like, I still struggle to see kind of what it's going to look like. But once Matt edited it and graded the footage and that, oh, it's spectacular. It is such a good little camera. And it slots into the market so beautifully. It's so perfect.
Yeah, I think the idea here is that it's going to give so many more people the opportunity to do cinematography at a much more affordable price. And that's why this is going to be a game changer.